We are Campaign Force. This is the Veterans in Politics podcast. Let's introduce you to our guest.
This episode's veteran in politics is former RAF officer Darren Henry MP. After a military career spanning 26 years, Darren is just one of a handful of RAF veterans in the House of Commons. He famously got elected following the Battle of Broxtowe, defeating incumbent MP Anna Soubry. Darren has truly broken the mould, coming from a Windrush Generation family that had no connections with either the RAF nor politics. As the new MP, Darren mentions his desire to stand up and serve again in his maiden speech. Do look it up. And reveals in this episode his motivation for serving his community. For him, that started with a litter campaign. It's time for you to listen to the conversation.
So my seat is Broxtowe in Nottingham, so that's what I'm doing here. So just about me, really. The key thing I've noticed is quite a few of my colleagues who, have dreamed about being a politician, an MP, since sixth form, and that was not me at all. I'm not a career politician. My parents, there was nobody in the family who was into the military. Mum and Dad were Windrush Generation, and actually they met in Bedford, which is where I grew up. My dad worked for Vauxhall Motors, where they made Bedford trucks, and he was working everybody's night shift, and my mum as well, working 2 to 10 shifts, passing night shifts in the night. And it was all about just working hard to try and get on in life. And so I was eager to get into work and found the Royal Air Force. But I was an airman. I started at the bottom in 1987. I did 26 years in the Royal Air Force.
Amazing.
And so I started in 1987 with a nice big afro. So that soon went. But now in lockdown, I'm working hard on it again. So, I found logistics. Eventually, I did air traffic briefly, and rose through the ranks really through hard work, which is something that was instilled in me from my parents. So, never intended to be a politician, but having left, I really do think the real world experience helps an awful lot, gives you perspective. In times like quite a tough week that we've had, you can think about slowing down because you've come across situations like this before maybe, and you can draw on that. And it's quite useful. So far I found, my background quite useful. But I'm still finding my way around Parliament because, I don't know what all the different things are.
Well, you guys in that kind of, I think 108 of new Conservative politicians, or was it 109? I think, the 109. You've had a baptism of fire alongside other new MPs from other parties. And I have to say, from where we're sat, we've been quite impressed by the new intake of members of Parliament and how you've reacted in such a short period of time. And of course, your constituency, Broxtowe, includes Chilwell, which those of us in the reserve forces will know and love. Will remember fondly and not so fondly from mobilisation process. Deep rooted in the armed forces in your constituency. So you're certainly a good fit for your patch. But Darren, considering your lengthy career from the mid 80s and that long list of service that you've just spoken about, why politics?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one as well because, like I say, I initially started off as an air trafficker and then went on to join logistics, and because I found that was something that I could really do well. So as an airman, you start off as an airman anyway. I just went into it because I thought, well, they got really nice uniform, really smart, and they're going to train me. I like it. I'm in. And what would you like to do? Well, I was thinking about joining the police force. So police. No, we haven't got police. Okay, firemen. Well, your chest is too small. This is the RAF Careers Information Office, by the way, 1987 in Bedford.
Amazing.
Of course, I know now this is probably utter nonsense, but so did a few tests, and they said, have you considered air traffic? Because obviously there were some openings there. And that's how I ended up in air traffic. But by the time I'd sort of looked around and wanted to move up, I then went and spoke to all the different officers, what I was interested in, and really found out what they did. So I did my homework.
Yeah.
And then joined what was then called the supply branch. So I found what I was good at, I felt, and I rose through and did that. And, you know, you've been in the military, so you know all the sorts of different things that logistics officers do. But there was one tour that I had, and it was at a big RAF base called RAF Marham in Norfolk. And I was the community support officer rather than, so it had a bit of the tacked on catering, and, you know, had, you know, the messes, the families' quarters, families' welfare, the community covenant, which I part drafted, that was signed with Norfolk County Council. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's all about, you know, making sure that military people are, you know, looked after in the civilian community.
Yep.
And in fact, I remember we just had the Libya operations while I was there, air operations over Libya. And so we'd all come back, and the Queen came to visit. She's Honorary Air Commodore there. You know, and I was saying to her, I got the opportunity to say to her, that it's really important what I'm doing, because we want to make sure that the people who are on mission are concentrating on that, not worried about their families back at home.
Okay.
I've got a real purpose here. And it was a bit of a cross between MP and social worker.
Yep.
I was on the local parish council. I'd never been on a parish council before, and you know, and sort of got into that. And local MP was Liz Truss, by the way. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was my favourite tour. So,
wow.
Whilst, you know, my CV says a lot about logistics, actually, I thought I really liked it. So anyway, when I left in 2013, what I did actually was, I've got a logistics background. I've got to apply for logistics type jobs. I worked for Carillion, who built Great Western Hospital, and then they were running its services. So it's project management that I'd done in the military. And then kind of got headhunted for a food distribution company using my logistics experience. I was a general manager down there at this company providing food to hotels on the south coast. You know, wagons roll at 4 a.m, all that sort of stuff. But I did that for a while and just thought to myself, actually, I'm not a businessman. I mean, yeah, they employed me because of my background in logistics. What I really like is public service. That is what I'm driven by. And I just thought, actually, I actually got the opportunity of a second career. I've got the opportunity of a second career. Do I do it? You know, the kids had got to a stage where, you know, bit of self-sufficiency. The opportunity was potentially there. I took a leap of faith, of course, but I decided to do it. And that's when I, you know, started on a journey of trying to be, you know, a politician.
That sounds to me that almost through service, the seed had been sown, just from a standard post. It's almost caught you by surprise, I guess. But what that constant sense of service within your DNA, that kind of alchemy of, I guess, circumstance and fortune of a posting, combined with that DNA of service, then grew into something bigger, which is refreshing to hear. Because, like you say, you haven't dreamt of this since the sixth form, like many of your colleagues. And I think that's what people want these days in our politicians. So you had that sense of service, completely get that. And we'll all resonate with that. But then you had a deeply political battle on your hands. Yeah. I believe you termed the Battle of Broxtowe.
Yeah, that's right.
Against a formidable opponent in Anna Soubry, who I used to work for loosely when she was a minister at the MOD. But, you know, we've seen her played out her persona during the B word debate. So a really high profile campaign as well. All eyes on Darren Henry. Tell us about that and how was that experience?
Well, it was quite interesting because I got selected 16th of September, and of course, things were hotting up. We didn't know for sure there was going to be a general election, but the signs were there. We need to get ourselves organised, and of course, up here, there's no money, there's no campaign manager, no activists to speak of, and Anna Soubry had taken, who was my predecessor, had taken some of her contacts, and some were disaffected and all the rest of it. So to be honest, I just thought, I need to be on a mission here. I need to be on a mission. This is going to be a battle. There's a Battle of Broxtowe was formed. But, at that time, I suppose I was fortunate that it was the conference season. So end of September, well, I went up to Manchester, which is where I met you.
Yep, you're a busy boy.
But that was, while I was busy, I had a sense of purpose for what needed to be achieved. This was my chance.
I could see that.
After all this time, am I going to do everything I possibly can to try and make sure that I give myself the best chance? And meeting people like you was great because I met you. You put me in contact with somebody else because I needed a fighting fund. I needed a fighting. There was no money in the association, so you really helped me enormously there. So thank you very much for that. But I needed activists as well. I needed to make contacts, and so I was, there were long days, but I went to every person that I could possibly go to, big names, MPs, tell them who I am, tell them who I was fighting against, what I was trying to achieve. Will you come down and support me? Because with them, they would bring the activists along because a big name was coming. So that was my plan, and so I did a lot of that. So I met all the names there. And I remember I'd made a relationship because I was a campaigner in the past for my party, and we were keen to get young Conservatives on board. So I bumped into this young Conservative that I'd known from before, and he said, "Oh, you need to go to the stand, for the young Conservative." So I went there, and I thought, "Yeah, young legs. Yeah, I like the idea of this. So what's going to happen here?" And actually, you mentioned Anna Soubry, but what Anna Soubry did for me was that she had very strong views, shall we say, and was well known for them. Yeah. And so I used that as a rallying cry. So I said, right, well, I'm in Broxtowe, I'm taking over from Anna Soubry, and I need to, win the seat. Who's with me? And it was Anna Soubry. We're going to get, and the irony is that Anna Soubry was not the threat. Yeah. Because she had won in the last election by 863 votes to the chap that was up against me. So it's a tiny, tiny majority. And they were very, very strong for Labour. I mean, I know I don't want to make it all about politics, but just to give you my experience, don't mind which party you're in, I don't mean to make that point, but it's my experience.
Yeah, I think what we can take is that you turned a perceived disadvantage, and obviously the incumbency factor does assist an MP. I think the stats are around about 2% in terms of adding to favourability for an incumbent MP, and then a woman actually does add another percentage point. So I like what you did there in terms of a perceived high-profile disadvantage and turn that into an advantage by just getting around, networking, meeting people, which is really, really cool to see. And I think all of us can learn from that if you're in what may seem like a sticky situation, and here you are now, as a member of Parliament. But you've been a councillor before. You stood in another parliamentary seat. You stood, went for other selections. So you faced disappointment, loss. So what was different this time in your success in terms of getting selected?
Well, again, it just really comes down to, just hard work. You don't just sort of arrive at this point. just by sheer luck alone. So working hard, doing the groundwork. Don't forget that I didn't intend necessarily to become a member of Parliament, even then. I just thought I like the idea of working for the community. Now, I'm a very strong believer in a community, and that's why, you know, I started to where I ended up living, because my last tour was Boscombe Down in Wiltshire. So moving around every 2 years is, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with. That's where I ended up, and so in that community, it's actually the nearest village to Stonehenge, and we're right next to Lark Hill. That's the next town, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with. What's going on there?
Any gunners in the chat today?
Yeah, are they? Yeah. So
Yes.
no, got on really well with the locals, so to speak, from the from the army there. It was brilliant. Well, it is. I mean, it's Salisbury Plain. I mean, I think something like a quarter or a third of the British Army will be in Wiltshire eventually when they all come back. So I'm amongst like-minded people, for one thing, which was really nice about being there. But anyway, so we're now in a house now in a community. I'm affected by the things everybody else in the community is affected by. I went out litter picking in the community. I'm interested in doing something, you know. In fact, my mum was horrified. My mum said, litter picking, you know, as though, is this what it's come to? But no, I felt that was, you know, something I could do in the community. It's an older community down there, and, you know, a bit of liveliness down there would be quite good. So I went to try and be a councillor. It's a unitary council down there, so it's borough and it's county combined, and they have divisions there. And I don't want to be political, but, you know, the person I was up against potentially, because I did get selected for Conservatives, was a Lib Dem who'd been there 26. He'd been a councillor for 35 years, and he'd been in that division for 26 years.
Blimey.
So what did he do? Well, he went around gradually over 26 years, and he knew everybody, and everybody knew him, and he had his cups of teas and everything around people's houses and all that sort of thing. And then me, as a young whippersnapper, came in and just went everywhere. You cannot replace just going on the doorstep.
100%.
There is no replacement for just hard work. I actually enjoy it on the doorstep, I must admit, but going out there and getting yourself known, you know, talking to people, you know, what sorts of things are they really interested in? What would they like to get changed? What would they like to get done? And guess what? We like to do in the military. We like to get things done.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge. It's great to go out. And actually, you get, you know, in politics, and I have no idea how long you've all been involved in politics yourselves, if at all, but you just find yourself just having to rely on being on the doorstep, having a relationship, building that relationship. It's a bit like, you know, you have to hunt for something, but you go away and then you'll come back, you'll get some knockbacks where people are a little bit disappointed with you. You can't achieve everything, but most things people are satisfied because you can achieve it. And there's actually something really good in that satisfaction of actually managing to be able to achieve something. And that just spurred me on. So I became well, I was on the doorstep all the time. It was a shock result because I had the highest turnout in Wiltshire, because people knew me. I'd spent a very quick time trying to get to know everyone. And then just got into local government, which, you know, I thoroughly enjoyed. And in that time, I'd become an activist as well. So I joined the Conservative Party, you know, made it sort of known I was interested in being on the list and all that sort of thing. And I'd actually fought an unwinnable seat, parliamentary seat. But one of the things that I didn't have was the experience of, you know, being a councillor and actually being out there, having to work and sort of, you know, get results for people. So I think that was invaluable. Just being a councillor and local government, I can't, speak highly enough of it. And I beat him, and I got in.
There's something in at the start of that when you were talking about the litter thing, and it might seem trivial, and you said your mum was like horrified what you're doing out there picking litter. I'm actually facing a similar thing right here in my community at the moment. I'm starting a litter campaign, right? And it really winds me up because I go out walking with my dog. But this also links to a conversation I had with someone yesterday via Zoom who's interested in politics, brand new, has no idea, not a member of a political party. And I think he got himself kind of wrapped a little bit around the axles about the whole party political thing. I was like, forget that. Starting point, give a shit about something. Locally, there must be something local that really winds you up. And I've had a couple of issues here that I haven't involved my political connections with. I've just got shit done through, from our background in the armed forces, that the minerals about us to be able to grip an issue and go out and sort it. And that's what I'm doing. And if you're passionate about that thing, that's a really good starting point. So I'm glad you brought that up, litter picking, because it might seem small and trivial, but actually it's a demonstration of how much you care about your community, rather than being motivated, say, by career. So that's amazing. I'll give you the £5 note for bringing that one up later on. And one thing I am quite interested in, obviously in Wiltshire, it was quite natural given the percentage of military in that community. But in terms of your political narrative and how you talk about being a veteran, I mean, given your lengthy service too, I quite like it that you talk about that. And I think you were even in the Conservative Party manifesto, in terms of the Armed Forces Covenant military section. You were the poster boy for that. It was great to see. But how have you reconciled that in terms of your narrative when talking to people? How much you dial it up or dial it down, on the doorstep or in the chamber? How have you navigated that? Because I'm really interested to hear that identity of a veteran, as it were, in your service.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I think I hid it under a bushel. It wasn't the first thing I'll tell people. I'll just go in there and just talk to people, listen. Actually, that's probably a good thing actually to do, is to think about coaching and listening to people, and then going away and trying to solve their problems rather than instructing. But I'm in the military. I do that. It's a job. It's a way of life. But I mean, it's everybody's like this. I didn't really understand until I came out and other people observed me. That you are a little bit different. You're made a little bit differently. And I'm sure if anybody on this Zoom chat, if I said, okay, what are your highest held couple of values, then in a hand, you'd all come up with something, but there'd only be about a handful of themes on it. Loyalty and integrity would probably be in there. So we share that, and people know that about us and can trust us. And well, you did mention that Chetwynd is in my constituency, of course, so there are military people here. But I just think we get things done. People trust us, loyalty and integrity. And of course, I wasn't thinking that when I was, approaching people. I was just, approaching them in my usual way.
Yeah.
So I was kind of told, you need to make more of this. So until I ended up plastering it all over my CV and everything. So it didn't come naturally. That's the truth.
I think you've got the balance quite right, actually, Darren. From what I've seen, in a very short period of time, I think you've used it, you've dialed it up and dialed it down where necessary in order, you've been quite smart with it. So those that are interested in, some people might be struggling with their military narrative because it might be security reasons, it might be because it doesn't necessarily come naturally, but certainly no matter what party you're in, to an extent it will serve as an advantage, mostly because your values of who you are, because they're lived values. But also there'll be those situations when there's no cameras, when you're not in the chamber, where you're literally sat down listening to someone, and the fact that they do trust you because they know about your military background, I think that's really the most important part where it can become a strength. And it sounds like that's what's happened to you.
Yeah.
So, well, you're a member of Parliament, and in terms, obviously, we do have people from the armed forces community. That's what we're about at Campaign Force, and on the call. Would you say, have people from the armed forces community approached you, and maybe they've asked you about what we've just discussed around the narrative, or asked you for general pieces of advice? What would those pieces of advice be that you might have given to aspiring councillors or aspiring members of Parliament?
Don't just estimate, the real world experience that you've got, because, we go all over the place and we have to learn really quickly, and then we have to sort of get ready, to do well there, and then wind down and wind up again for the next thing. So those things are in you, really, and that just helps to get things done. And we had a saying in the RAF: it's not just what you do, it's what you have been seen to have done as well.
Yeah.
So you do need to use that, because the public need to know that you're doing that work for them. So don't hide under a bushel, which was my natural inclination. Use that real world experience and just don't change. Just get things done. Don't expect, if you've had a rank and as they are here, people are just going to jump when you speak. It doesn't work like that. You need to win people over with the persuasive arguments and all those things. I mean, I'm not trying to teach you to suck eggs, but I just found it really strange that when I left, I thought, I'm not going to just be a military person everywhere I go. And if they happen to notice the standing and that sort of thing. I thought it was funny. I've only been to 2 conferences, and one of the conferences was the one at Manchester I mentioned. And one, I left in 2013. So the first conference was in 2014 in Birmingham. And obviously I was ex-military, and I saw Bob Stewart in one of the lectures, Colonel Bob.
He's cropped up a few times in these conversations.
Yeah. And I thought, so obviously I made a beeline for him, and I said, what's it like, and all the rest of it. And I just noticed that, and his usual, really, really nice guy. He was really, really friendly. And I just thought, that's great, but on his badge, everybody's got the Conservative badge on. His says Colonel Bob. So, don't lose it, use it.
Yeah, I like that. And do you know what? Exactly what, from my experience of working at the MOD with employers, a lot of that reconciliation around rank and experience within business, that's a common problem there. It's not just within politics. But the important thing that you said there is about underselling yourself, because we need to talk up our values and our skills and not hide them under a bushel, as you've just described. And that is a common trait within the kind of humility of the armed forces community. But no, sage advice.
Thanks to our guests, and thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, hit subscribe now. Alternatively, you can support our mission by checking out in the show notes below, where you can rate, donate, or become our mate. Thank you.